So here, I've sized the nodes according to degree centrality, which is one of the key measures of network measures that we look at in social network analysis. So this is a measure of how many links an author has. In this context, it counts the number of different co-authors a researcher is published with, but that's also added to the number of times. So there might be multiple papers with a co-author, then that would also count in the degree centrality score. So we have the nodes here sized according to their degree centrality score. So the larger the symbol, the higher number of collaborations the author has. And I've added the name label of the authors to the highest 30 degree centrality scores on this figure. So you can look and see if you're on there or anyone you know is on there, if the text is big enough. More than half of those with the top 30 highest degree centrality score are from Francophone institutions from Europe or West Africa. And most of them, but not all of them, are in that main component. So moving on to the affiliation network, once again, we have nodes colored by language according to the same color scale. And the link thickness denotes value or the number of times that two institutes have collaborated on a paper. So now we've broken the authors down to their affiliation and looked at how these affiliations are connecting with each other. This affiliation network includes 349 institutes, and it has 32 components, including 10 unlinked institutes, which means that 10 of these institutes are maybe collaborating with researchers within the institute, but not across institutes, at least on this topic and in this time frame. So the main component of the network connects 299 institutes. And the network has a higher density than the co-author network, with 5% compared to the 0.6% of possible institutional connections present. So similar to the co-author network, we find a tendency towards homophily by language, though somewhat less. The EI index here is 0.69, where a -1 would indicate perfect tendency to only connect with people or institutes that share your same official language. What we do find is that there's also a tendency towards homophily based on the country that the institute is based in. So the EI index for in-country ties is -0.63, where a -1 would indicate that you would only collaborate with institutes in the same country. Interestingly, Nigeria-based institutes make up 22% of all the institutes in the network and have a distinct subgroup within the network wherein there are few ties with other countries' institutes. So further analyzing the affiliation network, we run between this centrality measures and a key player analysis. So I'll explain a bit what between this centrality means. And what you see here is that the nodes are sized by between this centrality, and the red squares are key players. So between this centrality is a score indicating that those who are well able to reach others in the network with the fewest steps. So these actors can be considered to be good liaisons and may be able to control the narrative. However, even these highly linked institutes may not necessarily be able to easily reach the entire network, especially when you have a relatively fragmented or less dense network. So then we do this key player analysis, which identifies a set of actors, and with these actors, you can collectively reach the entirety of the network within 2 steps. All right, so what I've done now is given you the lists of these top institutions, right? So here are the lists of the top 30 institutes in terms of degree centrality and betweenness centrality. Now remember, degree centrality shows the institutes that are publishing a lot with other institutes. The top 30 is a relatively diverse set here. We see a mix of Francophone and Anglophone, Northern and Southern institutes. although we can see a number of West African institutes as well. We see Ghana, Burkina Faso, Benin, Gabon, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire. We also note that many are missing. When we look at the betweenness centrality, which is the table on the right, and this, remember, is a measure of reach across the network, maybe an ability to sort of set the narrative. The set of the top 30 is less diverse. Only one Francophone and only Nigeria and Ghana in the West African countries. This gives the impression that the Anglophone institutes are better networked, even if there are a number of Francophone and local institutes that are highly active. When we look at the list of key players, now remember this is a set of actors that you can reach every institute within 2 steps. While it's not a terribly diverse set of actors, we can think strategically about these actors as the ones who can be leveraged to facilitate more collaboration across the network. So moving on to conclusions, we see a lot of research capacity here, and though the research network is highly fragmented and shows a tendency towards collaboration within language groups, this is, of course, understandable in the West African context. However, it is important to find those liaisons who can bridge these communities and share results and approaches across language groups to encourage evidence and solution sharing. When we look at the institutional network, you see this is a bit denser, and though institutional collaboration does tend to happen within the same country. So then we can focus on strengthening cross-country evidence sharing and deliberation on optimal policy solutions that can strengthen the case for researchers and others who are advocating within their own countries, right? Sharing across countries what the situations and the solutions have been. Pardon me. Institutes with good networks, which we'll think about as betweenness, can be leveraged to facilitate collaboration with those who are less active, but with those who are very active but not as well connected when we think about the degree centrality scores. In addition, key players can be targeted to communicate cross-country learning throughout the network and work to facilitate broader collaboration. And these actions may help galvanize researchers around a set of high-impact policy solutions. So sort of reflecting back on our objectives for this work and as food for thought as we move into the discussion, you know, what we were looking for is to highlight the institutes that we can partner with, or that whether it's Transform Nutrition West Africa, our collaborators, our partners, others working in the same sort of sphere, who can be partnered with to facilitate increased collaboration throughout the research network. In addition, we reflect a bit on the roles for Northern and Southern researchers. So a few West African countries have many strong institutes, but some don't have any that are showing up among these highly active or highly networked institutes. And if we want more context-specific evidence, we're going to need to rely on strong local research networks. So it's important to facilitate. When we think from an equity perspective, who has the voice in evidence generation in West Africa? There's high betweenness centrality, mostly among Northern Anglophone institutes. So, pardon me, how can we work to enhance the role of West African Francophone institutes as well? All right, so that's my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and we would love to open up now for questions and discussion.